I had a girlfriend that I had dated in high school that I perceived was someone that really could understand me, relate to me, connect with my life circumstances, and I believed I could connect to hers, and I wanted to be married and have a family, and those were my life desires. And our marriage began to struggle, our relationship began to struggle, predominantly from my feelings of I'm not sure that she really hears me or that I'm really valid here. I'm not sure that my feelings really matter here. I don't feel connected. I attempted on several attempts to try to find a connection with her that really meant something to me. And it was at that time in my life when I found some homosexual pornography. I worked at a particular store where it was very accessible. It was a convenience store. And in finding that pornography, I found my attention and my focus started to be drawn to the men in those photographs, and something inside me began to just burst out in fantasy and desire to connect with other men in a way that I didn't perceive I ever had in the past. I began to fantasize about what it would be like to have a relationship with a man and what that would mean to feel important or significant to another man, and that experience led up to an initial adulterous homosexual encounter, a time when I engaged in a sexual encounter outside my marriage. And at that time I just was frightened about life and felt disconnected and detached, and I just went with the flow. I just decided, forget it all. I'm tired of trying to grapple with life and relationships and marriage and all the other things that go along with it. Maybe this is the place for me. Maybe this is really what's going on in me. Maybe the homosexuality is the key player here. I lived in an apartment building where everybody that lived there was involved in homosexuality. I began to isolate myself into a community away from those who didn't want anything to do with homosexuality or people that were involved in that. I really perceived that that was where I was headed. That's what I wanted. I completely invested myself in a subculture of people who were involved in homosexuality. I wasn't doing very well with relationships. I had become pretty untrustworthy in my own life, and I began to experience some other people that were untrustworthy to me, and it came to the place where I was really dissatisfied. I was really struggling. I went to an Al-Anon meeting that was predominantly set for people involved in homosexuality, people in the homosexual culture. I think at the time they called it gay AA, I think is one of the terms they used. And I went to one of those meetings, and that was the first time in my life that I experienced a group setting where someone across from me responded to something I said by saying, I can really relate to you, or I understand what you're feeling. And that did something in my heart which dislodged a pattern that I had lived in all my life, and that was that no one could relate to me, no one ever heard me, I was invisible, I didn't have any value. And that experience caused me to begin to search for something better than where I was living. A friend of mine at the time told me right off the bat, he said, John, first of all, remember, you're John first. And that really set something in motion about my identification with homosexuality, in that I've always seen it as behavioral. I've always seen it as relationship choices or sexual behavior or involvement in a culture. It was always either an adjective or a verb. It was never an identifier for me. So I firmly believe that someone calling themselves a homosexual is really not true, but rather it's about my behavior, what I choose to do, my sexuality, who I choose to relate to, and how I choose to relate to them. But it's not a noun. Today, when we say a homosexual, people don't define it as behavior. They immediately go right to, oh, there's something different about you. There's something uniquely different, that you're a different kind of person than other people. And I resist that definition because I don't think it's I don't think it's a decision of integrity, because I am not a homosexual, and I never was a homosexual. And I'm not a former homosexual, because I never was a homosexual to begin with. But rather, I was involved in homosexuality. I had homosexual relationships. I had homosexual attractions. I was involved in a homosexual community. So when we talk about gay or homosexual, even if we talk about bisexual or lesbian, I don't want to give someone a misunderstanding by using a noun that I don't think appropriately applies.